Ready? Hi, everybody. Sonia Rollins with BACC. Thank you for joining me. Today with me, Gary Gianino, our treasurer-collector.
Yes.
Treasurer-tax collector, Gary? Or
Treasurer-collector.
Treasurer-collector. Thank you for joining us.
Yep, thank you.
Listen, before we start, I think it's important that we just kind of acknowledge the amount of work you've done for the town of Burlington. Really, I mean, obviously you're a resident of town. You're the first appointed treasurer-tax collector, which we'll get to.
Yes.
But Gary, years of service in municipal government.
I moved into Burlington in 1985. I think by 1986 or 87, I was elected to town meeting. At that time, there was an opening, so I went and talked to 9 people in Precinct 1, and I got onto town meeting. The following year, I got onto Ways and Means. I spent, I don't know how many years, probably 5 years in Ways and Means, chaired it a few times.
Yeah.
And then in 1993, I ran for the Board of Selectmen and served for 18 years.
18 years.
18 years.
And might I say, you did a marvelous job.
Oh, thank you.
No, honestly, all kidding aside, it's very interesting because, you know, we've known a lot of people who have served on the board, but when you give 18 years plus the back amount of time that you've given before in town meeting and Ways and Means, I mean, really, you made your mark in Burlington. I mean, we're grateful for that. Seriously, all kidding aside.
Well, thank you. It was a very interesting time. We had we've had some tough times with some water issues back then and broken pipes, and
Yes.
which I remember was one of the first things they said, well, you have to get down there and help us. And I said, what do I know about? I remember Mike Connors is the first time I met Mike Connors, who was very helpful to me that day. But we had some interesting times. We had the Sun Microsystem campus. They were interested in doing a TIF. And at that time, Bob Morano was serving for me. He was a practicing CPA. I was a CPA in private industry. And we worked through a tax incremental financing, got $5 million for the schools for funding, $1 million for the town, and it really redeveloped that whole area. And we're still living through, I think, the benefits. It changed the whole dynamics of the town.
It really did when you think
Yes.
about it. And I think for those of us who came in later in years, meaning like later in getting involved, or even just for people who have moved in now, Burlington 20 years ago and Burlington today, 2 totally different communities.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, the town's done a very good job, and especially with our economic development officer, now Melissa, of attracting quality companies
Right.
in industries, into life science, into the town. Burlington has a great location, but it also has provided, Burlington did a very good job of zoning business area, commercial areas versus residential areas, which,
Yes.
and that's been a benefit. But the growth through Sun Microsystem into different satellite type businesses really put Burlington on the map.
It continues to be on the map.
It continues.
You know, it's funny. It continues to be on the map, but it's a challenge again, right? Because
Yes.
it's kind of almost like everything evolves and makes its mark, and Burlington is situated well, location-wise, like you
Correct.
said, and it has the right product. And now, with an economic development director and with a management team that's looking forward to what it needs to do, now you're just kind of, it goes back to zoning again and wondering what
Correct.
you need to do.
It does.
Yeah.
They're not making land anymore, so a
No.
lot of it's reuse.
Yeah.
And the protection in some areas.
Yeah.
We had the landlocked parcel was a very contentious
Good word.
discussion back
Yes.
then, and some people wanted to develop it. On the board, I voted against it. I look at it as an annuity for the town, and maybe 20, 30 years, if the town needs it for some reason, fine, but right now it's open space. But we had to discuss with different communities as to what happened with that. And I had just moved into town when the vote took place.
Yes.
And being in the private sector, in real estate, I said, I literally said, these people are crazy if they think it's only worth $814,000.
Right.
But you know, the town paid for it in the end. dollar-wise, and there the property sits. So, but there's been a lot of different things through the years. I remember the Mickey Mouse, Walt Disney, when they wanted to do a parade in town.
I remember that,
I was
Gary.
very unpopular when I said I voted no.
Yeah.
And people say, why do you vote against Mickey? Well, the background there would have cost the town close to $150,000 and a disruption to the community. There was, as you go through on the board, there's a lot of different aspects to go through. The Sun Microsystem was one, the three-way land swap, which brought us some housing.
Yes.
I was interested last night, Mayor Wu was talking about giving land for free if the developers build housing. That's basically what we did in the Grandview Farm. It helped with the three-way land swap. And we have the commons, or I think they're called
Grandview Commons, you're right.
Grandview Commons,
Yeah.
and those were Burlington residents, seniors, who wanted to live in a garden-style condominium. They didn't want to rent an apartment.
Correct.
Right now, I think we're suffering with too many apartments and not enough condos for people who are in the senior years, the early senior years.
Well, no, but it's a good point, because honestly, it was, you know, as we used to say, the wisdom of the board, right?
Yes,
That
yes.
it would be like that you knew to do something like that, and to make that swap. It, near and dear to my heart, saved the Grandview Farm.
Yes, yes.
Renovated the farm, which was wonderful, but it also did give the seniors that opportunity, and it shows us that there's really still a need for that.
Yes, we ended up winning an award in Mass Municipal Association for that thought process.
Yeah.
So this morning when I was driving in, I heard somebody poo-pooing Mayor Wu's idea of giving land away. They were balking at it, and I have a very short commute.
Yeah. 3 minutes. Right.
Or I would have called up and said that it's a doable situation.
Yeah.
If you can give the land to the developer, then the product they build will cost less to the resident, to the people. And you keep it perpetual so that when those people want to sell, they have to sell with a certain price, and you can adjust it over the years. But it's a workable model.
Yes.
And wish we could do it in other places, but we really don't have the land.
You know, and what you're talking about actually really points to the value you gave to the community on the board, and now the value in your current position, right? So talk about balancing that, Gary, coming from the private sector, right? Working the private sector, yet volunteering for your community or being elected into your community, and then melding those two things together, because it really was a perfect marriage to then become appointed as the first treasurer tax collector.
It was, it is.
Yes.
When I retired from the board, and somebody said, what are you going to do? I said, oh, well, I don't think I'm done yet.
Yes.
And I did go back onto town meeting. I took a little sabbatical for a couple of years, but got back onto town meeting. But and I looked at started a government review committee, because I do believe our charter needs to change.
Yes.
But identifying or starting it from the grassroots, with me being so involved, it sort of got diluted because people thought I wanted to be a mayor, which I had no intention.
Just interesting.
Right. So I had no interest. But going treasurer collector is really what my career was about. I was a CFO, COO of a few different companies, but I had a financial background. So it was a good opportunity for me. I had the background of knowing the community, knowing some of the laws, a talented staff in place.
Yes.
And so I looked at it as an opportunity to give back to the community in a different way, and help the community and organize. Brian Curtin, the previous treasurer collector, was there for 40 plus years.
Yes.
Did a very good job.
Did great service for the community.
But even when he and I talked, he said it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And so it's been a different experience coming from the private sector. You usually have not quotas, but you have to meet certain criteria. You set your budget. You're looking for revenue generation or net operating income, and it's a different world in the municipal government. People work hard.
Yes.
A lot of people will joke about that, but in the treasurer collector's office, our team is working diligently to make sure the bills get out on time, make sure we collect it. It's just real estate personal property tax, motor vehicle excise, which causes the biggest headache, and other billing for collection. On the Treasury side, we make sure we're taking care of all the money and safeguarding that. 2 years ago, I've been doing it for 2.5 years. 2.5 years ago, it was 10 basis points, or a tenth of a percent in interest.
Yes.
And so it wasn't, there wasn't really much to do. But now I'm discussing with banks and moving that interest rate up and having banks compete to get our money, and we're up to about 4% on money market accounts. Well, the amount of money we have, free cash or not, that means a lot.
Of course.
A tenth of a percent wasn't much, but when you start to get into 2, 3, 4%, and I have these banks competing for my money. And when they didn't take me seriously, I opened up with I closed a lot of banks, not a lot, just consolidated. But now I opened up a new account because someone was offering me 3.5 about 2 months ago.
And that's money. When you're talking about the budget of the town.
That's money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the existing banks saw I started moving millions of dollars from one to the other. Why? And now I have 3, 4 banks competing. I'm up to 4, and when I get back to the office, I'm going to talk to one of them that's at 2.5 and say, we're going to either move out or
you're going to meet us.
So that's from the private sector, competition and goals, and those are one of my goals. We're being more systematic with our collection of taxes. It's not a good, and cooperating with the assessors.
Yes. Because
there's exemptions people can have, there's deferral of taxes. To not pay your tax and be charged 14%, you're losing your nest egg, especially for some of the people who've lived in town for a long time. So 14%, if you don't pay your tax in a year and a half, it's called a tax taking.
Yes.
All we're doing is putting a lien on the property, and you're paying 16%. You can lose your equity pretty quickly over years. And
okay, now that's a good conversation. Hold that while we go to
Okay.
Chamber Charlie, because I'd like to come back to that, because I think
Okay.
sometimes people don't understand all it takes and about taxes and when it's leaned against your
Yes.
property. All right, so speaking of goals and setting up things, Fitness Together Burlington, one of the chamber members, we both know Brendan Stapleton and
Yes.
his team well. We'll be right back after we go to our chamber spotlight at Fitness Together. Hi everybody, Sonia Rollins here for Chamber Spotlight. We're excited to be here today. Normally we're talking food, but today we're talking fitness. I'm here with Brendan Stapleton, owner, operator of Fitness Together Burlington. He has been here for just about 16 years. Brendan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you because here's the truth. Everybody drives by here and sees Fitness Together. You're in a very prominent spot on Cambridge Street, and I'm excited to kind of have people see the inside. You're going to get to show them what it's like to be here, talk personal training, talk health. Hopefully you can give everybody some good pointers. It's not all about just working out or just what you eat. There's a mixture to make the perfect science of being healthy.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a true mix of exercise, nutrition, cardiovascular health, and everybody's here for different reasons. Some folks are here mainly for the accountability because they don't like working out. They want to work out in a safe space. They don't want to get hurt. Other folks don't want to go to a big box gym and be sort of on the floor with 50 or 60 other people. Client-wise is here for, numerous different things. It could be nutrition-based, it could be cardio-based, it could be rehabbing after an injury. People have signed themselves up for an event and now they have to do it, and they say, okay, how do I get from the starting line to the finish line? And then just regular folks that just want to just be healthy.
It's kind of amazing. Talk to me about the model of Fitness Together, because the model of Fitness Together, like you said, is for maybe someone who doesn't want to go to a larger gym, but you have 2 different types of models in here. Talk about that a little bit.
So we hit 95% private personal training, and then we have a small group, 4 to 6 people group training that we have in the morning and nights. But the 95% of what we do is all one-on-one private training, in a private suite where you're not, again, with anybody else, it's just you and your trainer. It's all customized based on someone's schedule right there, when they can get in here, right, what their life's like. Do they travel for work? It's individualized. So we see some folks twice a week, we see other people 4 times a week. So it's really what fits in their world.
Yes.
And what makes the most sense for them.
Yeah.
So we still have clients that even live local that just now have built a home gym and they can get in and out before the kids wake up. And then we have some folks that live, across the country and around the world that we just adjust for their time zones. And we still see them virtually via Zoom or Google or even Facebook sometimes. We concentrate really fitness over 40, and then we also train a little bit of sport specific, so running or triathlon, but we also have younger athletes, kids that are going into college age coming out of college,
Yes.
that just looking for healthy routines.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's the coaching comes down to that one-on-one and just meeting the person where they're at and then helping them get to the next, progress point in their journey.
Community, those who know you personally or those who've been around you or those who've been involved with the chamber and see you and your team are very involved in the community.
Yeah, so I've been a trainer for almost 20 years, and,
Yeah.
and the goal is to affect as many lives as possible. We take that right outside the doors, right? Whether it's food drives or helping out with families in need during the holidays
Yes.
or other different things. And we have a good time doing it in regards to some of the different ventures we've come across and different funds we support. But it's really about just being a pillar of the community.
Right.
And truly making a positive impact where you can.
Yeah.
Right? Do what you can when you can for as long as you can. And our goal is always to bring people together, right? Sometimes people don't want to go to a big box gym because they may be the lone wolf of their, community. They don't really know anybody.
Yeah.
Right? So when people come here, we want the clients to be introduced to each other. People have made lasting friendships, have met folks just doing, their warm up, and 5-6 years later they're out, having coffee. They're part of the same book club. They're playing bridge together. They're going for walks.
It's
right?
true.
They schedule so they know that they're going to see the same people all the time, right? So we try to bring community to those folks who may or may not have their own communities and feel like they're getting lost in the crowd.
All right, folks, there you have it. Brendan Stapleton, owner, operator, Fitness Together Burlington, located here on Cambridge Street. For Chamber Spotlight, I'm Sonia Rollins. It actually took me a minute to say Chamber Spotlight because we're normally talking food so much, and we do have to remind everybody there are so many other great locations to go. Brendan Stapleton, Fitness Together, him and his team.
I'll be there tomorrow morning at 5:45,
They
do some
like-
cardio, and then
They got you in,
they have
right?
me in. I've been doing that for probably close to 10 years.
I love him because he really does try to
Yes.
find what's right for you.
Yes.
And the whole team kind of operates that way, which is really nice.
Yeah, they do a good
Yeah.
job.
Cambridge Street, thank you, Brendan, for letting us take a peek. We'll be back to food things after. That's kind of like the let's talk exercise, then we'll talk food. It's a good marriage.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, back to what we were discussing. Gary Gianino, our treasurer tax collector, is joining us here. We were talking right before the break, obviously, the power of what you brought forward of, and again, like you said, Brian Curtin gave us 40 plus years, did a
Yes.
fantastic job. And then when you were coming in, it was a really unique situation because you got to take some of the things you knew from the private sector, the knowledge you knew from the municipal side and serving on the selectmen, and then marrying that all together to kind of bring forward something for the office that maybe you could tweak, and
Correct.
the competition of being able to now know that you can go out and bid things that maybe were there for a long time.
Well, I've had some bankers tell me nobody's ever done that to us before. Told
Yeah.
us this is what we need to keep the money in there, and I said, well, that's where I came from. You look for product, price, and service. So if it's 15 basis points below, which is like 1.5, 15 of 0.1%, so at 10% below, but they give me great service, I'll keep it there.
Right.
It's those sort of things. And I'm process driven. So if we're going to do something, I'll set the criteria. This is when we're going to start. These are the steps we have to take, and this is our goal.
Yes.
I find in the public sector sometimes that's drawn out, and you have so many people doing so many different things on a department level. We've been
Yes.
very lucky in Burlington. Some of our directors, department heads have just retired. They were there when I was a select board
Yes.
member.
Yes.
So it's a process. It's a different thought process.
Yeah,
So-
and right before we went on our chamber break, we were talking about taxes, and I want to get to the business community too, but let's stick to the residential side for a minute. The people, when they have their taxes or when they have questions about their taxes, Gary, how much they're being taxed, if they can afford to do it, like what's the good way to go about if you have a question about your taxes or if you're struggling to pay your taxes? We'll start.
Struggling to pay your taxes, I think talking to the assessors to see what opportunities there are or exemption availability, talking to family members or looking to see well, if I'm going to be charged 14% here, for some people they don't have a mortgage, and not that I'm trying to come out, are there alternatives? Are there
Yes.
alternatives? Are there programs that could help them to pay that? There are. I just had a housing assistance fund pay someone's taxes.
Yeah.
That was great.
And if they don't know these things, if they don't come, they'll never know.
Correct.
They should never be embarrassed. Is
No.
I guess what I'm trying to say is
No.
people should come to you or go to the assessor's office to try to see if there's help.
Yeah, Paul Tierney and that staff is very helpful. We're right
Yes.
opposite the other side
Yes.
to them. I can't recommend things, but there are options. Talk to family members. There's reverse mortgages. There's maybe selling the home, getting that equity that's been affordable in the last couple of years in the market, and going to another place. The problem right now is, where's that place in Burlington?
It is a problem.
And every time someone gets up and says there's senior housing in town, I have to shake my head and say there isn't.
Yeah.
There's townhouses. You're a senior. One of the reasons people, when they want to sell their homes, they don't want to walk up the stairs, or they can't walk up the stairs.
That's
So
right.
that's a personal issue I'm having as I see some of my peers, age-wise, moving out of town.
Yes.
And maybe I should have kept that ranch when I first moved here.
Who knew,
If I
right?
didn't have 3 children, I would have,
Yeah.
but those aren't available. And people are selling, their homes are being sold, and they're building these McMansions, as people call them.
Yes.
But for the taxpayer call, and Council of Aging can help.
Yes.
Give some help to people.
Yeah.
We can't recommend anything, and I wouldn't. I would never send someone to one banker or looking for
course.
certain things. But get your family involved too. In some cases, they don't know you're falling behind. And I remember one thing, and I was in real estate. We had mostly apartments. We had retail, but you make a decision if you do have a pot of money where to make those payments.
Yes.
And you have to look at what you have to pay your utilities, and taxes are something that's reoccurring. It's going to happen. So.
Well, and you said something before we went to break that I feel like people don't think of it that way, but it does speak to it a lot. When the interest rate is tacking on to what you owe, it's cutting into what you have in the equity of your home.
Correct.
So that's why people should never feel uncomfortable or embarrassed to be going to town hall to see if there's any options
Correct.
for them. Or at least to know by not paying it, what that means.
What the ramifications are.
Yes, at least so that you understand that going
Right.
forward.
And we're doing it, I think, communicating more to people, letting them know, listen, your taxes are overdue. The next step is going to be putting in the newspaper. And
Yes.
we get a slew of money. Some people have told me I'm trying to move people out of their homes. I'm not.
Yeah.
We had one auction, which became controversial, shouldn't have, but it became controversial. It was a 10,000 square foot lot, and there was no heirs. So we had to go through land court. We paid a fee for that, but we got that lot back, and we auctioned it off, and now someone's building a house there.
Yes.
And it's a 10,000 square foot lot, that's what it is. We're not in the real estate business.
You're not going to keep it.
No,
Right, of
no.
course, right.
And you look for open space, that's one thing this lot was not.
Right.
So
And that money goes where, Gary?
that goes back into the general fund. So
right.
in that case, it was a windfall of close to $500,000.
Right.
Now, $500,000 and $140 million, maybe not much, but I looked at, my goal has been to reduce our tax liability, people that haven't paid, and do it. And if we do it in a systematic approach where everybody's treated the same, then there really can't be any reason to doubt what we're doing. And I have gotten a call that from a few people trying to run me out of town. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But some people have the money, and they're deciding to do other things with it. So
Right. I think people don't realize that as much as it's the taxes that give us our services. Right?
Correct.
It's what we bring in, and we have 5 minutes to kind of touch on this part as well. But those taxes that we pay are one portion of Burlington's income, right?
Correct.
The other portion is the business community.
which pays for 62% of our taxes.
Which is
That's another-
significant.
Yes.
So that part I always like to kind of discuss with people, because those people who are not necessarily involved in either a chamber or in the municipality, they don't really understand how much of our tax base is covered by the business community.
And sometimes when people complain about traffic, I said, well, you have a business community, you're going to have some traffic. And remember, we don't pay, residents don't pay for services.
Yes.
And there's some discussion about that, it always gets pushed down. The real estate tax rate dropped from $9.95 to $9.40, but the value of the homes increased. So
Yes.
people are getting they say the average increase is $220 or something. Well, it's going to be higher for some, lower for others.
Right.
But it's for the benefits you have in a community, our tax rate's pretty low.
It really is.
It's low, and
Yeah.
not paying fees. Other communities have fees, and that's something the present board, be it the select board, school committee, have to deal with. We have, when I moved in, one of the reasons I moved into town, the school system was had good reviews.
Yes.
The recreation program, I was very surprised. I didn't know anything about it, but the first time I got a booklet, I said, wow, this is great.
It's actually
We
one of
offer
the best.
programs. The Council of Aging
I know.
offers some programs, which in a little while I will join some
Gary,
of
you
those
can
things.
join us at bingo. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
I'm trying to get bocce in the early morning or later
Sure,
in the
Marge would
afternoon.
listen. Yeah.
Right. But there are things to do, and it's a good meeting. As I said, and I alluded to it, I'm concerned about someone like myself who wants to downsize, stay in ownership. I don't have many places to go,
Correct.
and I'm not going to move into a townhouse.
Yeah.
I need a garden-style condominium, and they're very limited in Burlington. And I've had people that I've considered as my kids went through the school system, got to know, they've moved out of town.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
I know. You want to
That's
be able
sad.
to give people an option to stay in the community that they raised their children in, that they spent most of their adult years in.
Correct.
You know, you want to be able to say there's a place for you here.
When I moved in
know.
1985, I remember someone said something at town meeting, so it was 86. I remember Virginia Igo said, well, some of these people move into town and they want this and they want that, and then they're gone. Well, at the end of that meeting, I introduced myself to Virginia Igo and said, I don't know, Mrs. Igo, if you're talking about me. We became fast friends. I mean,
Yes.
it's understanding what the community is about versus coming into the community and think you're going to change the world. It doesn't happen. The wheels of government move slow. That has taken me, and my staff will tell you that, took some time to adapt to that. But I still work in the same, in my mind, still going at the same pace. So,
The same pace, just a little slower wheel.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But it's an effective wheel.
It's an effective wheel.
It really is.
And the town's very lucky to have some of the people that work in town government. And it's, unfortunately, and it's the temperament of people, everybody looks for the bad versus look for the good. And it's very discouraging to a lot of people. So you try, and I tell people in my department when somebody will come to the window, it's good to see somebody's working. Well, they're working all the time.
Right.
So
You can come in and look a little more.
that's right, that's right.
Gary, Gianino, I could spend hours talking
Yes,
to
we
you.
could.
There's so much to cover. Thank you for everything you do for the community.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
It was great to have you here. Folks, if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate in going into the town hall to see your treasurer tax collector. Ask your questions. They're there to serve you,
Yes.
and a very competent crew you have there.
Yes,
Thank
we
you,
do.
Gary, for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us for Back Talk. I'm Sonia Rollins.